First contact, last warning. The sky was bleeding. A crack of fire and smoke tore through the night as a massive blackened structure descended. It hovered over the city like a silent god, its surface shifting like liquid metal. Then, without warning, a deep, guttural sound echoed across the land. A message or warning. People stood frozen in the streets, eyes wide, breaths held. Then, the lights flickered, the ground trembled, and the first scream shattered the silence. It started as a whisper on the radio waves. A strange signal, faint but persistent, pulsed through every frequency across the globe. Astronomers and military analysts alike struggled to decipher it. But before they could find answers, the sky split apart. On July 17, at exactly 2:14 am UTC, thousands of massive objects entered Earth's atmosphere, streaking through the night like angry stars. The world watched in horror as citywide blackouts followed in their wake. Satellites failed. Communications fell silent. By the time the first impact shook the ground, humanity realized it was not a meteor shower, it was an invasion. Lieutenant James Carter stood on the rooftop of a military outpost in Virginia, gripping the railing as he watched the burning sky. The bright streaks rained down in controlled patterns, aimed at strategic locations. Every major city on Earth, New York, London, Moscow, Beijing, was under attack. His earpiece crackled to life. "Lieutenant Carter, report to command immediately." Rushing down the stairs, he passed rows of soldiers scrambling to arm themselves. The command center was a blur of flashing screens and panicked voices. General Howard stood at the center, his face carved from stone. "We've lost contact with half the world," the general announced. "Whatever's coming, it's already here. We need to prepare for the worst." The room fell silent as the main screen flickered. A satellite feed showed the first object landing in Washington, D.C. The pod-like structure hissed, its shell peeling back to reveal an eerie metallic interior. Then movement. Figures stepped out, tall, humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Their bodies shimmered like liquid metal, eyes glowing a haunting blue. Then, the feed cut to static. James felt his stomach drop. "We're under full-scale invasion." "Exactly," General Howard confirmed. "And we have no idea how to stop it." Dawn never came to Washington, D.C. Thick, black clouds loomed over the ruined city as alien war machines marched through the streets. Each towering construct pulsed with an eerie blue glow, scanning for survivors. The military had mobilized, but their weapons were useless against the invaders' energy shields. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly, missiles exploded mid-air, and tanks were reduced to molten slag. In the midst of the chaos, Sergeant Elena Vasquez led a small squad through the wreckage of a collapsed highway. Their objective: secure a downed alien craft for study. "Eyes sharp," she whispered, pressing against an overturned car. "Intel says the crash site is 3 blocks ahead." The squad moved carefully, weaving through burning vehicles and debris. A distant explosion sent shockwaves through the ground. As they turned a corner, Vasquez signaled them to halt. Ahead, a squad of aliens patrolled the area, their movements unnervingly precise. Private Reynolds cursed under his breath. "We're dead if they see us." Vasquez clenched her jaw. The aliens carried weapons unlike anything Earth had seen before. Rifles that crackled with energy, their barrels humming softly. She motioned for the squad to fall back, but before they could move, a high-pitched noise filled the air. The alien patrol turned their heads in unison. Then, with terrifying speed, they charged. "Contact!" Vasquez shouted, raising her rifle. She fired, but the bullets bounced off the lead alien's shimmering body. It raised a sleek, curved weapon. An energy pulse erupted from it, slamming into Reynolds, vaporizing him instantly. Panic surged through the squad as they scattered. Vasquez dove behind cover, reloading her weapon, even though she knew it was useless. The aliens advanced, their footsteps eerily silent. Then, out of nowhere, an explosion rocked the street. A human figure emerged from the smoke, carrying what looked like a modified rocket launcher. He fired again. This time, the blast sent one of the aliens crashing against a wall, its body flickering erratically before it lay still. The figure turned to Vasquez and pulled back his hood. A scarred face, sharp eyes, and a grim expression. "Name's Cole," he said. "Welcome to the Resistance." Vasquez stared at him, heart pounding. "You just killed one." "How?" Cole smirked. "Let's just say we've been expecting them." The sky burns red. The sky was not just burning, it was screaming. A deafening roar ripped through the clouds as fireballs rained down, painting the horizon in shades of crimson and black. People ran, shouting names that would never be answered. Buildings crumbled. Sirens wailed. And above it all, something massive loomed, cold, unfeeling, unstoppable. Then the first shadow descended. A figure stepped through the fire, its body shifting like liquid metal. Eyes like dying stars locked onto the terrified survivors. It raised a weapon, sleek, unnatural. And then the world turned to ash. Lieutenant James Carter barely had time to react. The base alarms screamed in his ears, their shrill wail mixing with the chaos outside. Through the cracked windows, the city of Richmond was drowning in fire. Burning debris streaked through the sky, striking buildings and sending plumes of smoke into the choking air. "They've breached our airspace," a voice shouted over the radio. Carter slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle and turned to Sergeant Vasquez. "What's our status?" "Bad," she growled, gripping her sidearm. "Communications are still jammed. We've lost half our ground forces. If we don't move now, we're dead." A tremor rocked the building, knocking over desks and sending loose papers fluttering. The main doors burst open as a bloody private stumbled in, gasping for air. "They're here." Carter grabbed the soldier by the shoulders. "Who? How many?" The private's face twisted in horror. "All of them." Then the wall behind him exploded. The shockwave hurled Carter across the room, slamming him into a desk. Through the smoke, dark figures emerged. Tall, humanoid shapes with shifting, metallic skin. Their eyes glowed an eerie blue. One of them raised its arm, revealing a sleek rifle that crackled with unnatural energy. "Move!" Vasquez yelled, diving for cover. A bolt of energy ripped through the private, reducing him to nothing but scorched remains. Carter barely had time to react before another shot burned through the air where his head had been moments before. Vasquez fired her weapon, but the bullets bounced off the alien's body, as if striking liquid steel. The creature turned its gaze to her, stepping forward with slow, calculated movements. It was toying with them. Carter gritted his teeth. No more running. He reached for a nearby grenade, pulled the pin, and hurled it straight at the enemy's feet. The explosion engulfed the room in flames, sending shrapnel flying. Smoke swallowed the creatures, obscuring them from view. "Go. Now," Carter shouted, grabbing Vasquez by the arm. They sprinted through the crumbling hallways, dodging falling debris and stray energy blasts. The base was lost. The only chance of survival was making it to the extraction point. Outside, the world had turned into a battlefield. The streets of Richmond were unrecognizable. Entire buildings had been flattened, replaced by towering alien constructs. Gigantic war machines marched through the ruins, their metal limbs crushing everything in their path. The air smelled of burning flesh and ozone. Carter spotted a makeshift barricade where a group of soldiers fought desperately to hold their ground. He recognized one of them, Cole, the resistance fighter who had saved Vasquez the night before. "Lieutenant, over here." Cole waved them over. Carter and Vasquez dove behind the barricade just as another blast shook the ground. "What's the situation?" Carter demanded. Cole reloaded his weapon. Bad. These bastards are setting up command centers across the city. They're not just invading, they're digging in. A deafening screech filled the air. One of the alien war machines turned toward them, its weapon charging. Incoming, Vasquez shouted. Cole grinned. Time for a surprise. He pulled out a strange-looking device, slapped it onto a nearby wrecked car, and pressed a button. The vehicle erupted in a surge of blue energy, sending an electromagnetic pulse rippling outward. The war machine flickered, its lights dimming as it staggered backward. EMP disruptor, Cole explained. Fry their systems, and they drop like flies. Carter's mind raced. If they could reverse engineer this tech, they might have a chance. How many of these do you have? Cole gave a grim chuckle. Not enough. The aliens recovered quickly. More of them emerged from the ruins, their numbers endless. The EMP had bought them time, but it wasn't enough. Carter made a decision. We fall back to the river. We need to regroup. Negative. Vasquez shot back. We run, we die. We fight now. Cole nodded. She's right. If we don't hit them here, they'll wipe out every last survivor. Carter clenched his jaw. Then we make our stand. The soldiers braced themselves as the enemy closed in. The sky above burned red, and for the first time, Carter realized. This wasn't just an invasion. This was extinction. And humanity was out of time. Cities in ruin. The city was dead. Not in silence, but in screams. Fires raged in every direction, thick smoke turning the sky into a suffocating void. Skyscrapers, once proud symbols of human achievement, now stood broken, their glass shattered, their steel bent like paper. The roads were littered with burning vehicles, crushed bodies, and the eerie glow of alien war machines scanning for survivors. A child's cry echoed between the ruins. A shadow moved. Then, the ground trembled as something enormous stepped forward. And the hunt began. Lieutenant James Carter crouched behind the remains of a collapsed bridge, his rifle held tight in his grip. The distant sound of alien engines rumbled through the air, their droning hum filling the city like the call of a predator hunting its prey. Movement up ahead, Sergeant Vasquez whispered. Carter peered through the thick smoke. The once thriving streets of Richmond were now a battlefield of rubble and death. Alien drones hovered between the skeletal remains of buildings, scanning for any signs of human life. One of them passed directly overhead, its red eyes sweeping over the wreckage. Carter held his breath, his finger hovering over the trigger. Then, from the shadows, a scream. A civilian, an old man, ran into the open, his face contorted in terror. The drone reacted instantly, its body shifting as a thin barrel extended from its core. A single pulse of energy struck the man, disintegrating him in an instant. His body was gone before his scream had even finished. Vasquez clenched her jaw. They're exterminating us. This isn't war. This is slaughter. Carter exhaled slowly. We need to keep moving. Extraction point is 5 blocks east. If we stay here, we die. The team pressed forward, weaving through burning wreckage and abandoned cars. Every corner, every alley could be a trap, and they all knew it. Near an overturned bus, they found them, survivors. A small group of civilians huddled in the wreckage, their eyes wide with fear. Among them, a young mother clutched a crying child to her chest, while an older man held a rusted pipe as if it could stop what was coming. Please, the mother begged. Take us with you. Carter hesitated. His squad barely had enough ammo to protect themselves, let alone a group of unarmed civilians. But leaving them behind meant certain death. Vasquez answered for him. Stay close. Move when we move. They barely made it 2 blocks before the ground shook. A massive war machine, a towering 4-legged behemoth, stepped into view. Its metallic skin glowed with shifting colors, pulsating like a living thing. Its central core hummed with energy, a cannon already charging. Down, Carter yelled, pulling the mother and child into cover. A blast of white-hot energy erupted from the war machine, tearing through buildings like they were made of paper. The shockwave threw Carter against a wall, his vision spinning. He barely had time to recover before the machine's searchlights snapped toward them. "Run!" Vasquez screamed. The civilians sprinted for their lives, but the machine was faster. Its long legs moved with terrifying precision, crushing everything in its path. Drones swarmed ahead of it, cutting off escape routes. Carter fired at one, hitting its core and sending it spiraling into a burning building. But more took its place. The mother tripped, her child slipping from her arms. The little girl cried out, her small hands reaching for help. Carter dove, grabbing the child just as a drone's laser scorched the ground where she had fallen. He handed her back to her mother. "Keep moving. Don't stop." The war machine's cannon whined as it powered up again. Carter knew they wouldn't make it. Then, out of nowhere, a missile streaked through the sky, slamming into the machine's side. The explosion sent fire and metal flying. The machine staggered, its glowing core flickering. Another missile followed, then another. The monstrous war machine collapsed in a heap of fire and smoke. From the rooftops, figures in makeshift armor rained down gunfire. Humans, fighters, resistance. A rope ladder dropped from above. A woman in a scorched leather jacket peered down. "Get up here now." One by one, Carter, Vasquez, and the civilians climbed up. The moment Carter's boots hit the rooftop, the woman yanked up the ladder and tossed a grenade over the side. A blast of blue energy sent drones spiraling. She turned to Carter, eyes sharp. "Name's Raleigh. You're lucky we found you." Carter took in the sight. A dozen fighters, armed with scavenged weapons and explosives, stood ready for war. Beyond them, across the ruined skyline, more rooftops flickered with signs of resistance. "You're fighting back," Vasquez said, disbelief in her voice. Riley smirked. "We're not just fighting. We're winning." Carter looked at the survivors at the burning city beyond. Richmond was lost. But humanity? Not yet. The fall of nations. The world was burning. Cities once filled with life now lay in ruin. Smoke and fire choked the skies. Nations had fought back against the Southern invasion. But one by one, they had crumbled. Governments collapsed, armies were annihilated, and billions had died. General Carter stood on the last intact command post in North America. The underground bunker beneath the ruins of Washington, D.C., was filled with the last remaining leaders of the resistance. Maps of Earth displayed glowing red zones, territories fully controlled by the Southern. Only a few blue zones remained, scattered pockets of human survivors still fighting back. "They've taken Europe. Asia is lost. Africa and South America are barely holding," said Admiral Reynolds grimly. "We are running out of places to retreat." Carter clenched his jaw. "Then we stop running." On the streets of Paris, Captain Vasquez led what remained of the European resistance. They fought through the rubble, dodging alien patrols, scavenging weapons, and keeping survivors moving. The Eiffel Tower had collapsed under awful bombardment. The city was nothing but a graveyard. Vasquez knelt beside a young soldier, barely 18, bleeding from a plasma wound. She pressed a hand to his chest. "Stay with me." The boy coughed. "Are we losing?" Vasquez looked at the ruined city, at the bodies, at the endless night of Tarthan warships blotting out the sky. She wanted to lie, but she couldn't. Not yet. She stood. "We have to move. The enemy won't stop hunting us." In Beijing, the Great Wall was nothing but a scar on the landscape. The last Chinese forces had fallen 2 days ago. Xarthan machines roamed freely, processing captured humans for unknown purposes. Among the ruins, a small group of scientists worked in secrecy. Dr. Han Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he examined a piece of Tarthan technology salvaged from a downed warship. The device pulsed with eerie blue light. "We can't stop them with guns," Han said, "but maybe we can find another way." His assistant, Mi, nodded. "If we crack their tech, we might turn the tide." A distant explosion rattled the underground lab. Time was running out. Back in the bunker, Carter addressed the remaining resistance leaders. "The nations of Earth may have fallen, but humanity has not." A grim silence filled the room. "We have one chance," Carter continued. "A final strike against their command. We know their leader, Warlord Korvek, is stationed on their primary dreadnought. We take him out, we disrupt their forces." Admiral Reynolds nodded. "A suicide mission." "A necessary one," Carter said. "The world is watching." As the last resistance forces prepared for battle, Vasquez's team joined them. In the ruins of Earth's greatest cities, the survivors gathered. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, all who could still fight. They had lost everything. But they were not done yet. The nations had fallen, but the war was not over. Resistance awakens. The city was dead, but the fight wasn't over. Smoke curled from the ruins, painting the sky black. The stench of burning metal and flesh filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, the metallic shriek of an alien drone echoed. Beneath the rubble of a collapsed highway, a human eye flickered open. Bloodied, bruised, but alive. Captain Elias Kane gritted his teeth and pushed himself up. The invasion had shattered the world, but humanity was not finished yet. The resistance was about to rise. Kane crawled through the wreckage, every movement sending sharp pain through his battered body. Around him, the remains of Washington, D.C. stretched like a graveyard. Skyscrapers lay in heaps of twisted steel. The once busy streets were nothing but shattered concrete. A flickering radio in the debris crackled. All surviving units, regroup at the underground base. Resistance Protocol Alpha activated. Kane grabbed the device. "This is Captain Kane. I'm alive. Heading your way. Over." A pause. Then a reply. "Kane, you're supposed to be dead. Get here fast. We don't have much time." The underground base was hidden beneath the ruins of an old metro station. Hundreds of survivors, soldiers, engineers, medics, worked in the dim light, preparing weapons, building defenses. At the center of it all stood General Monroe, his face hardened by war. "Kane, you son of a bitch. I thought we lost you." Kane smirked. "Not that easy to kill, sir. What's the situation?" Monroe gestured at a holographic map. "The invaders think we're broken. They think this is over. They're wrong. We've got a plan." A young woman, Riley, a hacker, stepped forward. "We found a weak point in their command network. If we hit them where it hurts, we can cripple their operations." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Then what the hell are we waiting for? Let's show these bastards what humans can do." Under the cover of night, a small team moved through the ruins. Kane led them, his rifle steady in his hands. Every step was a risk. Drones patrolled overhead, scanning for movement. One wrong move, and they were dead. A low hum filled the air. "Get down," Kane whispered. The team pressed against the rubble as an alien walker passed, its glowing red eyes scanning the ruins. It hesitated, sensing something. Kane gripped his knife. If they were spotted, they wouldn't get a second chance. The machine moved on. Kane exhaled. "Go, now." They reached their target, an alien command station built into the remains of a skyscraper. Riley hacked the security. "We're in," she whispered. Explosions rocked the night as the resistance struck. Rockets screamed through the air. Plasma fire lit up the ruins. The battle had begun. The sky burned as the resistance made their stand. Alien machines fell, their twisted metal bodies crashing to the ground. But the invaders were relentless. More ships descended, releasing squads of armored warriors. Kane fought like a man possessed, cutting down enemies with precise bursts of gunfire. Monroe led the reinforcements, rallying the fighters. Push forward. Don't stop. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the alien machines hesitated, its weapons lowered, and for a split second, Kane saw it. Doubt. They're not invincible, he realized. They can be afraid. The resistance wasn't just fighting back. They were winning. The awakening had begun. Shadow War begins. Darkness had become their greatest ally. The cities were nothing but ruins, the skies patrolled by alien machines. But beneath the surface, in the tunnels and shadows, humanity was preparing for war. Captain Elias Kane pressed his back against the cold concrete wall of a ruined subway station. He could hear the heavy footsteps of an alien patrol above. They thought the resistance was broken. They were wrong. Tonight, the Shadow War would begin. The resistance had learned the hard way. Facing the invaders head-on was suicide. But ambushes, sabotage, and guerrilla warfare. That was their new strategy. Kane and his squad moved silently through the ruined tunnels. Their mission: to destroy an alien supply convoy moving through the shattered remains of New York City. Hold positions, Kane whispered. His team melted into the shadows. The sound of hovering drones filled the air. The convoy was near. The alien walkers moved in formation, their glowing red optics scanning the darkness. Human resistance had been scattered, also they believed. Kane pressed a detonator. Boom! The street above them erupted, engulfing the machines in fire and debris. The resistance charged, unloading bullets and explosives into the chaos. The battle had begun. Move! Take out the stragglers. Kane ordered, cutting down an alien soldier with his rifle. The enemy fought back, their plasma blasts lighting up the ruins, but the resistance had the advantage. They knew these streets better than anyone. The attack had been a success, but the invaders were quick to respond. Within minutes, alien reinforcements descended from the sky. Enormous war machines stomped through the ruins, their weapons primed to wipe out any resistance. Fall back. Get underground, Kane shouted. The resistance fighters scattered, diving into hidden tunnels and escape routes. Plasma fire rained down, turning buildings into molten slag. But they had done their job. The enemy had been wounded. In a hidden command center beneath the city, General Monroe studied the battle reports. This is just the beginning, he said. The Shadow War has begun, and we will make them bleed. Across the world, similar battles erupted. Resistance cells struck in the night, destroying supply lines, hacking alien communications, planting traps in enemy bases. The invaders, so powerful in open warfare, struggled to fight an enemy that refused to stand still. Kane sat with his team, reloading weapons and tending to the wounded. He knew this was only the start. They think they own this planet. They think we're nothing. He looked up, fire burning in his eyes. Let's show them what humanity can do. The betrayal within. Trust was a fragile thing in war. The enemy lurked in the shadows, but sometimes the real danger stood right beside you. Captain Elias Kane had fought aliens, machines, and death itself. But now, the enemy had a human face. A gunshot echoed through the underground bunker. A body hit the floor, and Kane realized the war wasn't just against the invaders anymore. It was within the resistance itself. The resistance had grown, but so had the risks. Spies. Traitors. Kane had seen signs, misplaced orders, compromised missions, ambushes that made no sense. Someone was feeding information to the enemy. We have a rat, General Monroe growled, pacing the war room. And if we don't root them out, we're finished. Kane scanned the gathered soldiers. Tension was thick. No one could be trusted. Each fighter was battle-hardened, yet exhaustion and paranoia clouded their eyes. The resistance had survived horrors, but this betrayal could unravel everything. "We need a plan," Riley, the resistance's best hacker, said. "We don't just find the rat, we make him expose himself." Kane nodded. "Then we set a trap." Kane and Riley devised a fake mission, a high-value target only a handful of trusted soldiers knew about. A critical supply drop in Sector 17, deep within enemy territory. If the invaders showed up, it meant someone had betrayed them. The mission was set. At dusk, Kane led a small team toward the ruins of Sector 17, staying in the shadows. Every step felt heavier than the last. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone among them was waiting to strike. As they reached the rendezvous point, the air changed. A low hum filled the silence. "Drones inbound," Riley hissed. In an instant, the night exploded with flashing lights and plasma fire. The invaders had been tipped off. Gunfire roared as Kane's team fought to escape. But he wasn't leaving without answers. He tackled the suspected traitor, a soldier named Vance, pinning him to the ground. "Why?" Kane shouted over the gunfire. "You sold us out." Vance smirked, even as blood trickled from his lip. "Because we've already lost, Captain. You just don't see it yet." The words sent a chill through Kane. He knew the resistance was struggling, but what did Vance mean? The invaders had crushed humanity's cities, yes, but the resistance had survived. "What are you talking about?" Kane demanded, tightening his grip. Vance laughed. "The war isn't what you think it is. The enemy isn't just up there." He glanced toward the sky. "They're down here too, and they've already won." Kane hesitated. Plasma fire screeched overhead. This was more than betrayal. This was something worse. Vance was dragged back to the underground base, locked away under heavy guard. But the damage was done. The enemy had struck hard, and now paranoia spread through the ranks. "We can't fight a war like this," Monroe muttered, rubbing his temples. "Not when we're fighting ourselves." Kane clenched his fists. He had fought aliens, monstrous machines, and unspeakable horrors. But now, the resistance itself was falling apart. That night, Kane met with Riley in a hidden chamber beneath their bunker. They pored over intercepted communications, reports, and classified files. And the deeper they looked, the worse it got. "It's not just Vance," Riley whispered, voice tight with fear. "There are others. And they're not just feeding intel to the enemy. They're part of something bigger." Kane stared at the flickering screen, his jaw tightening. Then the power cut out. Total darkness swallowed the room. A second later, an explosion rocked the bunker. "They're here," someone shouted in the distance. The traitors weren't done yet. Chaos erupted as alarms blared through the underground base. Kane grabbed his weapon and sprinted into the hallway, his mind racing. This wasn't a random attack. It was planned. Coordinated. Someone inside the resistance had let them in. Gunfire crackled through the corridors. Kane ducked behind cover as a squad of enemy infiltrators stormed the bunker. Resistance fighters fell one by one. "Hold the line," Monroe bellowed, rallying what few troops remained. Riley emerged from the control room, breathless. "They shut down our defenses from the inside. We're locked out." Kane's blood ran cold. It was worse than he thought. The resistance wasn't just compromised. It was under siege from within. "We have to push them back," Kane said, gritting his teeth, "or this war ends tonight." Kane led a counterattack through the bunker, fighting through hallways now filled with smoke and bodies. Every enemy they killed, every traitor they exposed, brought them closer to retaking their base. But the damage was done. "They wanted us to fall apart," Riley said, reactivating the security grid. "To turn against each other until there was nothing left." Monroe wiped blood from his forehead. "And they almost won." But they hadn't. Not yet. Kane stared at Vance, still locked in his cell, smirking even as alarms blared. "This isn't over," Kane muttered. "Not by a long shot." The resistance had survived the night. But the war had changed. They weren't just fighting aliens anymore. They were fighting something far more dangerous: each other.